I was still holding the warm bag of fried chicken when I heard my stepson's voice in the dark garage say, "Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow." And my wife, Carol, my wife, did not stop him. For a moment, my body forgot how to move. The garage smelled of cold concrete and motor oil, that sharp, familiar odor that never fully disappears no matter how often you clean. The overhead light was off, so the only light came from the small window above the workbench and the blue glow of Evan's phone. I could see his outline. Broad shoulders, head tilted slightly, like he was listening to a routine update. My fingers tightened around the paper bag as grease soaked through, still warm against my palm. I had picked it up at the Kroger Deli on Harshman Road because I foolishly thought maybe we could have one normal night. A small peace offering. The kind you make when a house has been tense for months and no one wants to say it out loud. Evan's voice stayed calm, too calm. "Yeah," he said again, low and almost bored. "It's done. He won't make it to Monday." He laughed softly, like someone reacting to a bad joke. Then I heard Carol's voice through the speaker, close enough that my throat tightened. It was soft and careful, not shocked, not angry. "You're sure?" she asked. My vision narrowed. That question, "You're sure?" hit harder than the threat itself. Not "don't you dare," not "what's wrong with you," just confirmation that the plan was solid. Evan shifted, and I heard a faint clink of metal on the workbench. He was likely turning something in his hand, a tool, a socket, something sharp. "I'm sure," he said. "You said you wanted it over." There was a pause. I waited for my wife to say my name, to say, "Evan, stop," to say, "Frank's been good to us." Anything that sounded like a conscience. She didn't. She exhaled into the phone, and it sounded like relief. "Tomorrow," she said. "Just be careful." That was when my stomach dropped, like missing a step on the stairs. I backed up without thinking. My boot scraped the concrete, and my heart slammed. Evan's head turned slightly toward the door. I held my breath until my chest hurt. He didn't come looking. He went right back to the call, his voice lowering again. "Yeah," he said. "I'll text you when it's done." I slipped away quietly. I didn't slam the door or let it click. I pulled it shut until it rested, then walked fast and silent around the side of the house, the cold December air cutting into my cheeks. The night felt disturbingly normal. Porch lights glowed up and down the street. A neighbor's dog barked once, then stopped. Somewhere, a television played through a window. Riverside, Ohio, doing what it always does, going to bed early, waking up early, acting like trouble only exists on the news. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my keys. I shoved them into my pocket and kept walking until I reached the sidewalk, then turned like I was just a man out for a short walk, not someone fighting the urge to throw up. Patience is my tool. The phrase came to me like an old reflex. I used to say it to apprentices at the HVAC shop when they rushed a job and stripped a screw or snapped a line. Slow down. Patience is your tool. Use it first. Now I had to apply it to myself, or I was going to storm back inside and do something that would ruin what remained of my life. I got into my old sedan, my work beater, as Carol called it, like it embarrassed her, and sat there with the engine off. My breath fogged the windshield. My phone felt slick in my shaking hand. Call the police. My thumb hovered. Then reality set in. What would I say? "Hello, officer." My stepson said he cut my brake line, and my wife didn't object. No recording, no confrontation, no body. In a small town, a man accusing his wife and stepson without proof becomes a joke fast, or worse. You get labeled unstable, paranoid, old, confused. Evan would smile and say, "Frank's been stressed, he's been forgetting things." Carol would dab her eyes and say I'd been so tired lately, and then they would keep going. I couldn't let that happen. So I did the next best thing. I opened the roadside assistance app and requested a tow. The dispatcher sounded half asleep. "Pickup location." I stared at my house like it belonged to someone else. "Front driveway," I said, surprised at how steady my voice was. "Silver Ford F-150. I need it towed tonight." "Is it drivable?" "No," I said, my throat tightening around the lie. "Safety issue." "How soon?" "As soon as possible," I said, and then added, "Please." I hung up and listened to the quiet ticking of the cooling engine. My hands still shook, but my mind was already focused on what mattered. Evidence, timing, decisions that keep you alive. Evan had always acted like consequences were for other people. He was 32 and still lived like a teenager. New gadgets, new schemes, old grudges. When Carol and I married 11 years ago, I thought he'd mature. I believed stability might ground him. Instead, he grew sharper and meaner, like he decided the world owed him something, and I was the clerk refusing his discount. Months earlier, he'd asked me to co-sign a loan, just to consolidate. I looked at the paperwork and felt my blood pressure rise, the interest rates predatory. I said no. He stared at me, then smiled slowly. "You always think you're better than me." "I think I'm older," I said, "and I've seen what debt does." That night, Carol sided with him, not openly, not loudly, but in quiet ways. The silence when I entered a room. The way she'd say, "Maybe you should let it go, Frank." The way peace became my responsibility alone. Now I understood what letting it go meant to them. Headlights appeared at the end of the street. A tow truck. My heart thudded. The driver parked near the driveway, a heavy-set man in a beanie, breath visible in the cold. He looked at the truck, then the house, then at me sitting low in the sedan. He knocked on my window. I rolled it down slightly. "You the one who called?" "Yes." He nodded at the F-150. "What's wrong with it?" I swallowed. The bag of chicken sat cold on the passenger seat, forgotten. "Brake problem," I said. "I'm taking it to a friend's place." He studied me. "At this hour?" "He's up," I said. "I'm up. It's important." He shrugged like nothing surprised him anymore. "Where to?" I gave him the address I'd already chosen, the only place that made sense if my next move was going to be safe and clean. "Dayton," I said, "off Needmore Road." He whistled. "That's a haul. I'll pay." He nodded and went back to his truck. The winch rattled as the cable tightened, the sound making my skin crawl, because it reminded me of chains. I watched my F-150 roll onto the flatbed. That truck had been mine long before Carol and I shared accounts or lives. I'd driven it through snow, heat, and years that now felt like they belonged to someone else. The tow lights flashed red against the houses. No one came outside. No one asked questions. In this country, people mind their business until trouble shows up directly. The driver returned with paperwork. "Sign here." My pen shook, but I forced my hands steady. Patience is my tool. When I finished, he tore off a copy and handed it to me, studying my face like he was deciding whether I was drunk or sick. "You okay?" he asked. I looked past him at my house. The living room curtains were drawn, warm light leaking from the edges. Inside, my wife was probably sitting like everything was normal. "I'm fine," I said, "just tired." He nodded, unconvinced, but didn't push. He climbed into the truck, the engine growled, and the flatbed pulled away. As it disappeared down the street, something tore loose in my chest, grief, anger, and the last piece of the life I thought I had. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. "Where are you?" Then another buzz. "Evan, you moved my truck." My throat went dry. I didn't respond to either of them, not yet. I stayed seated in the dark sedan, the bag of chicken cold beside me, watching the tow truck's taillights fade down the road like a slow-burning fuse. I didn't yell. I didn't go back inside. I didn't show fear. I slipped away and did what I had always done when something went wrong in the middle of the night. I dealt with it. I didn't pull out immediately. I sat another full minute with my hands on the wheel, feeling my pulse in my fingertips. The house looked normal. Christmas lights on the neighbour's porch, a wreath on my own front door that Carol insisted on every year, even during the months we barely spoke. Inside, Evan and Carol were still there, likely still talking, likely already shaping the story they'd tell if anyone asked. I started the sedan and drove off slowly, like I was heading out for a late coffee. The Ohio winter air was sharp and damp, and the road shimmered where earlier rain had begun to freeze. I headed toward Dayton, toward Needmore Road, because that was where Ray Mercer lived, Evan's biological father. Ray wasn't a friend, not exactly, but he was the one person Evan had always treated with careful respect, like a dog around the person who trained it firmly. Ray had been a mechanic for 35 years, retired now, hands still marked by old grease no matter how hard he scrubbed. He knew cars, he knew tools, and he knew Evan better than I ever would. If anyone could tell the difference between a brake line that failed and one that was cut, it was Ray. And if Evan had done what I heard, I needed more than my word. I needed facts, records, times, witnesses, the dull, reliable details that hold up in court. Patience is my tool. The heater pushed out lukewarm air that smelled faintly of dust. My knuckles stayed white on the steering wheel. I kept seeing Evan's outline in that dark garage, hearing the casual way he said funeral, like it was a lunch plan. At the light on Harshman, I glanced at the greasy chicken bag on the passenger seat. It was absurd, something warm and ordinary meant to smooth over a family night. Now it felt like proof from another life. I drove with the radio low, not for music, but for company. A Dayton station talked high school basketball, then ran a furnace tune-up ad, My Old World, then joked about people driving like they were mad at the weather. I wanted to laugh. I couldn't. My phone buzzed again. Carol, call me, please. Then Evan. Where's the truck, Frank? I need it tomorrow. Tomorrow? That word landed hard. I didn't answer. If I did, my voice would crack, or I'd say too much, or I'd give them time to adjust whatever they were planning. I kept driving, crossing the Great Miami River, the dark water sliding under the bridge like oil. I thought about being younger, before Carol, before Evan, when my biggest worry was whether my back could survive another summer in attics and crawl spaces. Back when my first marriage ended quietly, not with betrayal, just exhaustion. 2 decent people who no longer fit. Now I was 58, and the person sharing my bed wanted me gone. Needmore Road was lined with worn businesses and low houses, the kind of place where people hold on to what they have. Ray lived in a 1-story brick ranch with a detached garage, an old Buick under the carport, and a flag stiff in the cold on the porch. I pulled in and sat for a moment. My mouth was dry. My hands were steady now, not because I was calm, but because something colder had taken over. I walked to the door and knocked before I could stop myself. Ray answered in sweatpants and a flannel, grey hair flattened like he'd been asleep. His eyes were sharp. "Frank," he said, like my name was a question. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk," I said. He glanced at the sedan. "Where's the truck?" "On the way," I said. "Towed." That woke him up. "Towed? Why?" "Because I don't trust it," I said evenly. "Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. "You'd better make sense." Inside smelled like black coffee and old leather. The living room held a recliner, a small TV, and shelves of framed photos. Evan as a kid with a bat, Evan at a graduation, Evan beside Ray on a fishing trip. Ray had kept the good moments. He pointed to the kitchen table. I sat. He didn't offer coffee. He just waited like he expected me to admit I'd lost it. I took the tow receipt from my jacket and placed it on the table. Ray picked it up, read the address. "You had it brought here," he said. "Why?" "Because you know cars," I said, "and I need it checked before anyone else touches it." He set the paper down. "Frank, what's going on?" I took a breath. Saying it made it real. "I overheard Evan tonight, in my garage." His eyes narrowed. "Saying what?" I didn't give every detail, just the part that mattered. "I believe someone tampered with my brakes, on purpose." Ray leaned back, the chair creaking. For the first time, his expression shifted from annoyed to careful. "You accusing Evan?" "I'm saying I'm not driving that truck," I replied, "and I want it inspected by someone who won't soften the truth." Ray watched me, then stood and went to the counter where a small notepad sat by a landline. He flipped it open. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "I want you to own the truck," I said. He turned. "Excuse me?" "I've decided," I said. "I'll transfer it tonight and do the paperwork first thing in the morning. You'll be the legal owner." His face hardened. "Why?" "Because I need a clean record," I said carefully. "If anything happens with that vehicle, I need it documented who had it and when." He worked his jaw, thinking. "So you're building a case?" "I'm trying to stay alive," I said, my voice rough at the end. He leaned forward, forearms on the table. "Frank, if you're wrong, if you're just scared and pulling me into your marriage." "I'm not wrong," I said too fast, then forced myself to slow down. "Ray, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to look." He studied me. Ray trusted engines more than people. Facts over feelings. Finally, he nodded once. "All right, I'll check it." Then he pointed at me. "But listen, if it's dangerous, I'm not driving it. It goes straight into the garage and onto stands." Relief hit so hard my eyes burned. "That's exactly what I want," I said. He grabbed his coat from the hook. "Tow truck should be close." "Already on the way," I said. He paused and looked back. "Why give it to me? Really? What's the catch?" I met his eyes. "There isn't one. Just do me a favor. Check it completely before it moves." He looked at me a long second, then nodded again. Not kindness, but understanding, the kind earned from years of dealing with a troubled kid. "Yeah," he said, "I will." Headlights swept across the window. The tow truck had arrived. Ray headed for the door, and I followed. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Carol or Evan. It was a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. Then another, then another. The screen lit once more. Ray Mercer. He was standing right beside me. He hadn't called. He hadn't touched his phone. Ray saw my expression, pulled out his own phone and checked it. His screen was lighting up too. Missed call. Evan. Ray lifted his eyes to mine. "Your boy's looking for that truck," he said quietly. My stomach tightened. "Yeah," I said, "I know." As the tow driver lowered the flatbed and the cable clanged in the cold like chains, I realized what I hadn't allowed myself to fully accept yet. Evan wasn't just planning to kill me. He was planning to do it soon. The driver moved fast, backing the flatbed down, metal whining and chains rattling through the quiet street. Ray stood with his arms crossed, watching every inch like the truck already belonged to him, which in a way it soon would. I stayed near the sedan, phone in my hand, thumb hovering. My heart was racing again, like it wanted to bolt before I could. Ray waved the driver closer. "Set it right in front of the garage," he said. "I'll handle it from there." The driver nodded. "Drop it or pull it inside." "Drop it," Ray said. "I'm not driving it an inch." Those words steadied me more than anything else had that night. The truck rolled off the flatbed and hit the ground with a heavy thud. The driver finished the paperwork, got paid, and drove off, headlights fading down Needmore Road. The street went quiet again. Ray didn't hesitate. He popped the hood, grabbed a flashlight, and slid a creeper from the garage. He moved on instinct, muscle memory doing the work. This was his world. I stood in the doorway, arms tight around myself, watching his boots stick out from under the truck. "So," Ray said from beneath it, voice muffled, "you want to tell me exactly what you heard?" I swallowed. "He said he cut the brake line." Silence. Ray rolled halfway out, propped on one elbow, and looked straight at me. "You sure that's what he said?" "Yes." "And Carol." She didn't stop him. Ray stared at me a moment, then rolled back under without another word. The flashlight beam jittered across hoses and metal. He muttered to himself, half phrases mechanics use when thinking. My phone buzzed again. "Evan, why is my dad calling about the truck?" I didn't answer. "Then Carol, Frank, please, is getting out of hand." "Getting out of hand." I shut the phone off and shoved it in my pocket. My hands were slick with sweat despite the cold. From under the truck came a sharp breath. "Frank," Ray said. His voice had changed, tight, focused. "Come look at this." My legs felt heavy as I crouched beside him. He angled the flashlight. I'm not a mechanic, but I know machines. I know the difference between worn and damaged, between age and force. The brake line wasn't frayed. It wasn't rusted through. It was cut clean and straight, like someone took their time with the right tool. I stared until my vision blurred. That's not an accident," Ray finished. He rolled out fully and sat up, rubbing his hair. "That's deliberate." My stomach turned. Even expecting it, seeing it made it real. Ray stood, paced once, then stopped in front of me. "When did you last drive it?" "Yesterday afternoon," I said. "It felt fine." He nodded. "Then it was done after that." My chest tightened. "Tonight." Ray exhaled slowly. "Jesus." We stood there in silence while the cold seeped in and somewhere a door slammed, life continuing. Ray pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police." My pulse jumped. "Wait, let me make one call first." He looked at me hard. "Frank, this isn't a family issue. This is felony tampering. Someone could have died." "I know," I said. "Just one call." He hesitated, then nodded. "One." I stepped aside and turned my phone back on. Missed calls and texts flooded in. I ignored them and dialed a number I'd saved years ago. Martha Klein answered on the second ring. "This better be good. It's almost midnight." "Martha, I need advice right now." She heard it in my voice and softened. "Where are you?" "Dayton, with my truck. The brake line's been cut." A pause. "Cut how?" "Clean. A mechanic's looking at it now." Another pause. "Okay, listen carefully. You didn't set this up. You didn't drive it. You didn't tell anyone else to drive it." "Correct. And the vehicle is no longer legally yours. It's being transferred in the morning. There's a paper trail." "Good. Very good. Now call the police tonight. Get this documented. Dates, times, witnesses." My throat tightened. "They might think I did something." "They might," she said, But facts beat fear. Stay calm. Say only what you know. I looked back at Ray, already dialing 911. Martha, I heard him say he did it, that he wanted me dead. Her voice dropped. Then you did the right thing leaving that house. I hung up. Ray finished the call and pocketed his phone. They're sending someone soon. We waited in the garage, the cut line hanging there like an accusation. I could hear my heartbeat. My mouth tasted metallic. Sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights washed over the garage, the truck, Ray's lined face. 2 officers arrived, one older, one younger. They took statements, photographed the line, asked why the truck was there. I told them everything, calm, clear, no yelling, no extra accusations. The younger officer frowned. You're saying your Stepson did this? I'm saying the brake line was cut, I said, and I overheard him say he did it. And your wife? She didn't object. The older officer wrote slowly. After nearly an hour, they left with promises of follow-up and nothing more. When it was quiet again, Ray leaned against the bench and rubbed his face. My own kid, he said. Jesus. I collapsed into a folding chair, exhaustion crashing over me. My hands shook harder now. You okay? He asked. I tried to say yes and gagged instead, barely reaching the trash can. Ray held it steady and said nothing. Afterward, I sat there empty and shaking, staring at the floor. I don't feel like I won, I said hoarsely. Ray shook his head. You didn't win. You survived. Outside, my phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Evan. I didn't listen. I already knew one thing. This wasn't over. By morning, the story had moved on without me. I woke on Ray's couch with my coat still on, neck stiff. Coffee smelled bitter and strong. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then the image of the clean-cut brake line snapped back into focus. Ray sat at the table, scrolling his phone. You're internet famous, he said. My stomach dropped. He turned the screen. Carol's Facebook post, long, emotional, carefully written. Please pray for my family. Frank left last night in a fit of anger and took things too far. My son is being accused of something terrible. Lies destroy families faster than accidents. There was a photo of her and Evan from last Christmas, smiling in our living room. Comments piled up. Praying for you. Some men can't handle losing control. I felt punched. She didn't mention the brakes, I said. No, Ray replied. She mentioned feelings. That's how she always did it. By noon, the neighborhood had chosen its version. I drove back to Riverside for clothes, keeping my head down. Neighbors avoided my eyes. Mrs. Keller stared like I'd dirtied her church. At the end of the block, 2 squad cars sat outside my house, the one with the wreath still on the door. An officer stepped forward. Frank Delaney? Yes. We need to ask a few more questions. Inside felt hollow. Carol sat on the couch, eyes red, hands folded. Evan stood near the hallway, arms crossed, calm, almost bored. You told them I left in a rage, I said to the room. Carol didn't look at me. You scared us. Evan smirked. Yeah, Frank, you've been acting weird lately. The officer raised a hand. Let's keep this respectful. I answered again. Same facts, same timeline. Evan watched, waiting for me to slip. Then he spoke. My stepdad hates me. He's been trying to push me out for months. That's not true, I said. Carol finally looked up. You said he needed to move out. I said he needed a plan, I replied. He's 32. The officer took notes. When they left, Carol stood and pointed at the door. You shouldn't be here, I laughed once, short, bitter. You planned my funeral. Her face drained of colour. You're sick. I walked away before saying something irreversible. That afternoon, Ray called. Police had come by again, he said. They spoke to the neighbours. About what? One person saw Evan in the garage late the night before. Another heard tools clanking. My pulse spiked. They told you that? He said they told him they were building a timeline. By evening, the local church group page had a post of its own. Carol shared it, asking for prayers during this difficult time. Rumours are spreading, and it's breaking our hearts. Someone commented, We stand with you, Carol. Truth always comes out. I stared at that line for a long time. Truth always comes out. That night I sat alone in a cheap motel off Route 4, watching the parking lot through the blinds. Every pair of headlights made my shoulders tense. I listened to the Evan voicemail I had ignored the night before. Frank, he said, voice smooth, you really messed up this time. Dad's upset, Mom's upset. You didn't have to do this, we could have talked. Mom. He never called her that around me. I forwarded the voicemail to Martha with the date and time attached. 10 minutes later she called. Good, she said. That helps. Helps what? Intent, she replied, in tone. He's not surprised. He's irritated. The next morning, Buddy Harlan called. We'd worked together for years before his knees gave out. Frank, he said, you're going to want to hear this. He'd stopped by an auto parts store near my house, the same one Evan used to hang around. He asked politely about camera footage, said he was helping with an investigation. They let him see it. Not officially, but enough. My heart pounded. Your stepson bought a tubing cutter 2 days ago, Buddy said. I closed my eyes. Then he added, your wife came in 10 minutes later. Different register, paid cash. The room went still. She knew, I whispered. She didn't stop him. That night, the radio announced it. Police are considering felony charges in a brake-tampering investigation involving a Riverside family. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, listening as my life was reduced to 30 seconds of airtime. For the first time since the garage, I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because the truth finally had a voice. The courthouse in Riverside looks tired, like it's carried weight for 100 years. Brown brick, stone steps worn smooth down the middle. The kind of building that smells like old paper, floor polish, and winter coats that have seen too many Ohio storms. I'd driven past it my entire adult life and never imagined I'd walk inside carrying the truth about my own family like a cinder block. Martha Clean met me out front, collar up, hair tucked into her scarf. She looked like someone who'd seen every kind of human mess and stopped being surprised by any of it. You ready? She asked. No, I said, but I'm here. That's the same thing, she replied. Inside, voices echoed off the high ceiling. A metal detector beeped. A deputy in a tan uniform told everyone to keep moving. And there, in a hallway lined with bulletin boards full of public notices, I saw them. Carol and Evan. Carol wore a navy coat and a cross necklace, dressed for sympathy. She held a tissue, eyes red, mouth set in that careful line she used when she wanted to look hurt but strong. Evan stood beside her in a clean button-down, hair combed, face calm. He looked like someone waiting for a job interview, not a man who tried to turn my breaks into a funeral. When he saw me, his lips twitched slightly, like he couldn't believe I'd taken it this far. Carol met my eyes. For a moment, fear crossed her face. Then it hardened into anger. You don't have to do this, she whispered as Martha and I approached. Martha didn't slow. Ma'am! He didn't do anything. He reported a crime. Carol flinched at the word crime. Evan smiled at Martha. Polite. Morning. Martha looked him over like a cracked furnace line. Don't talk to me. We went into the courtroom and sat on the wooden bench. The room was smaller than people expect. Not a TV courtroom, just the judge's bench, a few rows of seats, flags in the corners, and a low hum of conversation like a church before service. I recognized faces. Mr. Keller from down the block, 2 women from Carol's church group, a man I'd seen at Kroger dozens of times. Small towns don't miss public moments, especially when a smiling family from bake sales is involved. My throat tightened. My hands shook, and I pressed them between my knees. Patience is my tool. Martha leaned toward me. Breathe. Let them watch. It doesn't feel fine, I murmured. It doesn't have to, she said. Just be steady. The judge entered, older, grey hair, glasses low on his nose. He looked like someone who'd heard every excuse and already knew how stories usually end. Everyone stood, then sat. The prosecutor spoke first. Then Evan's attorney, younger, shiny, stood and framed his case. This is a family dispute, he said. A resentful stepfather, a scapegoated stepson, a wife caught in the middle. Heat climbed my neck. Carol dabbed her eyes on cue. Evan stared forward, still. Then Martha stood. With respect, she said clearly, this isn't resentment. This is a cut brake line. This is a tow receipt. This is a timeline. This is an adult man stating he overheard a plan to kill him, corroborated by physical evidence. The judge peered over his glasses. We're here for a preliminary hearing, he said. Not a sermon, but I'll hear what you've got. Martha nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The prosecutor called the first witness, a technician who examined the brake line after police impounded the truck from Ray's garage. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't need to be. He described the cut, clean, straight, not corrosion or wear, a tool cut. The judge nodded slowly. Evan's attorney tried to challenge him. Could road debris have caused it? The technician blinked, annoyed. A clean cut at that angle? No. Could it have been an accident during maintenance? The technician leaned into the microphone. Someone doesn't accidentally cut a brake line clean through and miss it. That's not maintenance. That's negligence at best. The judge scribbled something and murmured, or something else. Next, the prosecutor played Evan's voicemail, the one I sent to Martha. Evan's voice filled the room, smooth and controlled. "You really messed up this time." I watched the audience. A few heads tilted. People recognized that tone. Not fear, not surprise, but irritation and control. When it ended, Evan's jaw tightened for the first time. Martha stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Delaney." My legs felt stiff as I walked to the stand. I raised my right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat. The microphone was too close, every breath loud in my ears. Across the room, Carol stared at me like I was an enemy. Martha's voice was calm. "State your name and age." "Frank Delaney," I said. 58. "Where do you live?" "Riverside, Ohio." "In your own words, tell the court what happened the night you called for the tow." I swallowed. The room was quiet enough to hear a coat zipper. "I stopped at Kroger," I said. "Picked up fried chicken, trying to have a normal night." People shifted. "That detail grounded it," I continued. "I came in through the garage. The light was off. I heard Evan on the phone. I heard him say, 'Yeah, I already cut the brake line. See you at his funeral tomorrow.'" My voice cracked, and I hated that, but it was true. Martha nodded. "Who was he speaking to?" I looked at Carol. I didn't want to, but I did. "My wife," I said. "Carol." Carol jerked her head and whispered to her attorney. Martha stayed even. "How do you know?" "I heard her voice," I said. 11 years. You know her voice." The prosecutor asked, "Did she object?" My chest tightened. "No," I said. "She asked if he was sure." A soft murmur moved through the room. Carol's face went pale. Evan's attorney jumped up. "Objection, hearsay." The judge raised a hand. "Overruled for this hearing. We're evaluating probable cause." Martha leaned in. "What did you do next, Mr. Delaney?" "I left," I said. I didn't confront him. I called a tow truck because I didn't want to drive the vehicle. "Why tow it to Mr. Mercer's residence?" "Because Mr. Mercer is a retired mechanic," I said, "and I wanted someone knowledgeable to inspect it before anyone claimed I imagined it." The judge glanced at Ray in the back row. Ray nodded once, tight-faced. Evan's attorney rose for cross-examination, eager. "Mr. Delaney," he said, "isn't it true you've had conflicts with Evan?" "Yes," I said. "Isn't it true you wanted him out of your home?" "I wanted him to be responsible," I said. "He's 32. "Isn't it also true," he pressed, "that you transferred a vehicle with a dangerous defect to Mr. Mercer?" Anger flared. Martha's hand lifted, steadying. I answered calmly, "I told Mr. Mercer not to drive it. I asked him to inspect it before it moved." Ray's voice came from the back, low but clear. "He did." The judge tapped his pen against the desk. "Mr. Mercer, you'll wait to be called or you'll be removed." Ray went quiet. Evan's attorney pressed on. "But you didn't notify the police immediately, did you? You didn't call 911 from your driveway?" "I called a tow," I said. "Then my attorney. Police were contacted the moment the cut was confirmed." He smirked. "Convenient." I met his eyes. "Staying alive is convenient." A few muted, surprised sounds moved through the benches, not laughter, just that restrained Midwestern reaction of people trying not to respond. The attorney changed direction. "You're accusing your wife of involvement. That's a serious allegation." "I'm not accusing," I said. "I'm stating what I heard." "And yet," he said, "you have no recording." Martha stood. "Your Honor, may I?" The judge nodded. Martha addressed the court plainly, like outlining a plan. "We have physical evidence of a deliberate cut. We have a timeline placing the defendant near the garage. We have a voicemail indicating awareness of the act. We have witness statements, and we have store video showing the purchase of a tubing cutter." The prosecutor added that payment records showed Mrs. Delaney present at the store. Carol made a sound that was half gasp, half choke. Her head snapped toward Evan, and for the first time her expression wasn't controlled. It was open confusion and fear. Evan didn't look at her. He stared forward, jaw tightening. Carol whispered, "Evan, what did you do?" He hissed back, "Shut up." That was the moment. Not the brake line, not the voicemail, but those two words. Dismissive, sharp, as if she were a problem to manage, not a person. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Mercer," he said, "you are the owner, or soon-to-be owner, of the vehicle?" Ray stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "You examined the brake line?" "I did. And in your professional opinion?" "It was cut," Ray said, voice heavy. "Clean, on purpose." The judge nodded and turned his attention to Evan. Evan's attorney tried to recover. "Your Honor, we maintain this is a—" The judge raised a hand, his voice flat and final. "No." The room stilled. He glanced at his notes, then back up. "A mechanical coincidence," he said, repeating the phrase as if it tasted wrong. "With a cut that clean?" He paused. "Next, you'll tell me the truck performed surgery on itself." This time there was laughter, brief, restrained, releasing tension. Evan's face flushed. Carol began to cry, real tears now, not practiced ones. She covered her mouth and shook her head as if she could undo what she'd allowed. "I didn't know he'd really do it," she whispered. I looked at her, my voice low and worn. "You didn't stop it," I said. "You let it exist in our house." The judge struck the gavel once. "Based on the evidence presented, this court finds probable cause. A no-contact order is issued. The defendant will be held pending further proceedings." Evan's attorney whispered urgently to him. Evan stood, hands clenched, eyes fixed on me, not with regret or sadness, but with anger. My knees nearly gave way, not from fear, but from the weight of seeing someone's truth so clearly. Ray shifted beside me, ready if needed. Carol's crying faded into a quiet, broken sound. I sat there breathing, the courtroom air filling my lungs like the first full breath I'd taken in days. When it ended, I stepped into the cold Ohio sunlight. It was weak and pale, but it was light. I didn't feel victorious. I felt alive. I thought the courthouse doors would feel like an ending. They didn't. They felt like moving to the other side of the same storm. Outside, the wind cut across the steps, tugging at coats. A few churchwomen avoided my eyes. One, a woman I'd once helped with groceries when her husband was hospitalized, whispered to a friend and turned away as if I were something to avoid. Ray stood next to me, hands in his pockets, staring at the parking lot like he wanted to hit something and knew he couldn't. Martha came down the steps quickly. "Don't go back to the house," she said. "I wasn't planning to," I replied. "Good. No contact means no contact. Let law enforcement handle Evan. Let the divorce attorney handle Carol." The word divorce landed heavier than I expected, not because I didn't want it, but because I still couldn't believe I was here. That my second marriage, the one I thought would be calmer, nearly ended in a funeral. Ray exhaled sharply. "I can't believe my kid." Martha looked at him. "Believe it," she said. "Then act accordingly." She turned to me. "Frank, there will be backlash. People will say you set him up. People will say you exaggerated. Do not get pulled into arguing online." I almost laughed. "I'm 58. I barely remember my Facebook password." Martha's mouth twitched. "Good. Keep it that way." Ray drove me back to the motel. We passed familiar Ohio scenes that felt strange now. Casey's gas station with a high school football banner, a church sign that read, "Joy is a choice." I wanted to tell them to update it. Joy may be a choice, but so is harm. At the motel, I sat on the bed and looked at my hands. The shaking had mostly stopped, but my body felt drained. That afternoon, the detective called. "Mr. Delaney," he said, "we executed a search for tools consistent with the cut and collected additional store video." "I know," I said. "A friend helped with that." "We're treating this seriously," he continued. "Your decision not to drive the truck likely prevented a fatality." He didn't say whose, but I knew. After the call, my chest tightened, not from fear, but from realizing how close I'd come. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the garage, the glow of Evan's phone, Carol's voice asking if he was sure. Around 3 a.m, my heart raced for no clear reason. My hands went numb. I thought I was having a heart attack. I sat on the bathroom floor, back against the tub, breathing shallow, repeating, "Patience is my tool," like a prayer. By morning, I made an urgent care appointment. I hated it. Men my age avoid waiting rooms, but I didn't trust my body. The nurse checked my blood pressure and raised her eyebrows. "Been under stress?" she asked. I let out a dry laugh. "You could say that. The doctor said my heart was fine, but my numbers were high. He told me to cut caffeine, sleep more, and reduce stress." "Sure," I said. "I'll tell it to stop." He didn't smile. He looked at me kindly. "Stress can kill you if people don't," he said. That stayed with me. Over the next week, things moved slowly and officially. Paperwork, calls, Martha checking in, the detective updating me, Ray calling with short, careful updates like he didn't trust himself to talk longer. Carol tried to reach me twice, once through a voicemail that began with sobbing and ended in anger. Another time through a church acquaintance saying Carol wanted closure. Closure, as if she'd lost something, not nearly buried me. Martha told me not to respond. Silence is a boundary, she said, and boundaries kept you alive. 2 weeks later, I returned to the house with a deputy to collect the rest of my things. Walking inside felt like stepping into a museum of my own life. My boots echoed on the hardwood. The air still carried Carol's vanilla candle mixed with laundry soap. The living room looked unchanged, photos, couch blanket folded neatly, but it all felt staged now, like a set. Carol wasn't there. Martha had arranged that. Still, her presence showed up everywhere. A dish towel folded neatly, a cup left in the sink, her handwriting on a sticky note that read "Call Plumber." I carried boxes out while the deputy stood by, polite and uninterested, like he'd done this dozens of times before. In the basement, I found my father's old toolbox, the one I inherited when he passed. Holding its weight made my throat tighten. My dad was a quiet, steady man, the type who believed you fix what you can and walk away from what you can't. In the bedroom closet, I found the last thing I expected, the fried chicken bag, still crumpled in the trash from that night. The grease stains were set, the smell long gone. I stood there for a while, looking at it, that small, foolish attempt at peace sitting there like a punchline. When I left, I didn't turn around. I signed the divorce papers the following month. No shouting, no drawn-out courtroom scenes, just signatures and silence. Carol tried to write a note in the margin about reconciling later. Martha crossed it out with a single, firm line. Ray transferred the truck back to me once the evidence process ended, but I didn't want it anymore. Seeing it made my stomach knot. I sold it to a guy in Dayton for cash, less than it was worth, because I never wanted it in my driveway again. With that money and my savings, I bought a small condo near the river in Dayton. Nothing special. Second floor, quiet, no attached garage, just a modest balcony overlooking water that kept moving even when everything else felt frozen. On my first morning there, I made coffee and sat outside in a sweatshirt, watching the river carry leaves downstream. The air smelled clean, like wet earth and cold stone. I thought I'd feel victorious. I didn't. I felt worn out. I felt older than 58. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. Not completely safe. Nothing ever is. But safe enough to breathe without fear sitting on my chest. A week after moving in, I took a small part of the truck money and donated it to a local program that helps victims of domestic violence and supports safe exit plans. I didn't do it to make a point. I did it because I kept thinking about how many people hear threats inside their own homes and have nowhere to go. When the receipt printed, my eyes burned. Justice isn't watching someone suffer. Justice is watching the truth stand when you couldn't. That evening I received one last message from a number I didn't recognize. It was short. "You ruined everything." No name, no sign-off, but I knew who it was. I deleted it without responding. Because the real revenge wasn't a sharp speech or a dramatic moment. It was choosing not to play their game anymore. I sat on the balcony listening to the river and thought about the garage, the glow of Evan's phone, the calm cruelty in his voice, the silence from the woman I trusted. If you take anything from this story, take this. Trust your gut, not your pride, not your hope, not the version of someone you want to believe in. Your gut. And if you're hearing things in your own home that make your skin go cold, don't ignore them. Move carefully. Document everything. Get help. Tell someone you trust. I didn't yell. I didn't strike back. I stepped aside and let the truth do the work. If this story stayed with you, if it felt close to home, share it with someone who may need it. And if you want more real stories like this, stories about survival, truth, and justice, stay here, subscribe, and stay alert out there. Because at our age, wisdom isn't just knowing what's right. It's recognizing when something is wrong.